Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan. There are many different restaurants across Nassau County and many different cuisines to try from around the world without ever having to cross a single bridge. Today, we're going to feature one of those unique businesses. My guest today is Jeremy Merrin. He's the owner and CEO of Havana Central Restaurant Group, which owns 3 locations of Havana Central, one of which is located outside the Roosevelt Field Mall in Garden City. Jeremy, welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Pleasure to be here.
Jeremy, tell us, how did you get into the restaurant business?
It's a good story. When I was in high school, I was in love with a Cuban girl. And we met many years later at a class reunion, and I was in between jobs and working on a bunch of ideas, and one of which I was in love with a local Cuban restaurant in my neighborhood. And I was just talking to her about, what it's like to be Cuban and, the cuisine and how prevalent it was. And it turns out that there were not a lot of Cuban restaurants or Latin restaurants, for that matter, servicing the Latin community. It was a tremendous demand for good Latin food and just not enough to fulfill it. So we started working on this idea. I hired a wonderful consultant named Arlene Spiegel, and we bought out this little deli that was on 17th Street. We opened up about 9 months later. It was like giving birth, and we had a line out the door the very first day. It was tremendous.
That really is an accolade. You ended so nicely and easily with that, saying a line out the door. That's what, obviously every business would want. I'm going to ask you now, was there a giveaway or a buy one, get one free or something?
No, there wasn't any giveaway at that point. I wasn't in the position to give anything away. But the truth of the matter is that it goes back to my initial point. We realized that there was a tremendous demand for this kind of cuisine, and there was just not much to fulfill it. So I think that we were advertising. We had big, banners across the front area while we were under construction. And so people knew we were opening up. We announced the day. And when we opened up, people were lining up.
Where was that, the one in Roosevelt Field, or
no? It was the one we opened it up. It's no longer there because it was so small. When the lease came due to renew, it wasn't worth renewing. It was no longer really fitting into our concept. But it was on 17th Street between 5th Avenue and Broadway.
That's a great problem when your restaurant is too small. Yeah. People love that. And now I have to go back like Howard Stern and find out whatever happened to that Cuban girl.
Well, she's married. I'm married. Everything's on the up and up.
Okay. But, no, I didn't mean anything like that. I'm just wondering, does she know she was the inspiration for this?
We're very good friends. She actually, over the years, has vetted a lot of our recipes and cuisines. So she has put together a group of Latin and Cuban people who have come in periodically, taste our new items, and vet them for us. And of course, you have 15 Latins in a room, you have 30 opinions. So it's very hard to kind of get the recipe because everybody thinks they have the recipe and they're all slightly different. But it's actually served a tremendous purpose in terms of really directing us to the specific things that we need to carry, that we need to offer in order to remain very authentic.
How would you describe to the average person, that being myself, what is Cuban food if we compared it to Italian food or Asian food?
Okay. It's a very good question. Very often non-Latinos sort of group all Latin food as the same. Although there are a lot of similarities, there are also major differences. So for instance, in Cuban food, it's essentially not inherently hot or spicy. It is although you can add hot sauce and there are certain dishes that do carry some flavor with peppers, it's really not like Mexican for that matter. It's derived most of its influences from Spain, from the indigenous people, the Taino Indians that occupied Cuba and those areas prior to Columbus coming. And it's also recently received a lot of influence from the local Caribbean cultures. So it's sort of an amalgamation of all of that. You've got some classic Latin items like empanadas and flan and chicken and rice. There are slight differences in the way it is made and served, but you've got some of those classic cuisines. And then you have specifically Cuban dishes like vaca frita, which in English means old clothes. And it's basically a dish of pan-fried Cuban beef. So it's crispy on the outside. It is, moist on the inside. It's a spectacular dish. You've got ropa vieja. Ropa vieja is old clothes. Vaca frita, my mistake. Vaca frita is old cow or fried cow.
I hope you don't translate those on the menu for the people.
We don't, but it is sort of a classic Cuban joke that they call these foods, these names, but they symbolize something very specific. So ropa vieja, which is a classic Cuban dish, and that's the one that means old clothes, is essentially beef, which is sauteed with tomatoes, and something called sofrito, which is a Latin mixture of peppers and onions and white wine and garlic. There are other classic items like flan, although the Cuban flan is made a little bit differently. It's made with more egg yolks, so it's a little bit more solid, more cakey. But these are some of the classic dishes that every Cuban restaurant has to have on its menu, or else, there's no authenticity there.
Jeremy, when I go into a restaurant that I haven't been in before, I always ask the waiter or the maitre d' or someone there, I say, this is my first time here. What is the dish that if I have, I'm going to keep coming back? So can you tell our audience one or two or maybe three of the dishes that if we come in, we try that, we're going to be a regular there?
Okay. So this would be the perfect meal, in my opinion. You'd start with empanadas. We make spectacular empanadas in a bunch of different flavors and cheese, beef, chicken, shrimp. We always have some special empanadas on the menu. So I would start with empanadas with a nice dipping sauce, maybe a chimichurri sauce. And then I would definitely go for the vaca frita, which is the fried cow dish that I was speaking about. Spectacular dish. It is pan-fried beef with sauteed onions and peppers, and it comes with cilantro rice, which is sort of a green rice, and a fried egg on top of the cilantro rice. It's just spectacular. And then I really end it with either our flan or our tres leches cake. We have the best tres leches cake I've ever tasted, and we've got spectacular homemade flan. It's all great stuff, and that would be the perfect. Oh, the other thing is a side of maduros, a side of the fried sweet plantains.
Okay,
and that would make the perfect meal.
Now you've ruined the rest of the show for me because I'm going to be. I'm one of those people. If I see a commercial for Dunkin' Donuts, that little guy running down the street, I think of donuts all day, and now that's all I can think of. What you just said. For our audience, though, you used a word that most of us aren't familiar with: the empanada. Can you describe that? What is an empanada?
For lack of a better term, it's a dough pocket. It's a pastry filled with savory, can be sweet, but mostly savory things. It's sort of a handheld thing the size of your fist. And we make the dough with it's a very particular recipe, and we have yuca in the dough that gives it a chewier, better mouthfeel than, just a simple, crispy, flaky thing. And our fillings are very flavorful. Again, we use sofrito a lot in our recipes, which is that classic onion, pepper, white wine, garlic mixture. And we put that in with our chicken. And we also have a ground beef, which is picadillo, which is made with ground beef, olives, and raisins. We have an assortment of terrific fillings for the empanadas that really give them tremendous character.
That sounds like one of those things we could really like and make a meal out of just in and of itself. So I live close by there.
3 empanadas will fill you up.
There you go. I think I'm going to be visiting and start with the empanadas, and then you'll have a convert completely. Before we go further, Jeremy, I'd like our audience to know if you're just tuning in, you're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Jeremy Merrin. He's the owner and CEO of Havana Central Restaurant Group. They own 3 locations of Havana Central. One of them is located right outside the Roosevelt Field Mall in Garden City. And when we say outside the mall, you're actually on the perimeter. I mean, somebody would come off the main roadway, and you're one of the restaurants right on the perimeter. I think you're over by the theater, if I'm correct.
Right. We're right by the theater. It's sort of restaurant row there. You've got some other restaurants. We're slightly around the corner, but there's not an entrance from within the mall. You have to come outside of the mall, but it's a very big space. The restaurant seats about 300 people. We've got private dining areas. We do a lot of events and corporate meetings and lunches there. It's a big location with a lot of personality.
It seems like the perfect location because you're near a theater. People come out, or before it, they would like to have dinner. You're with other restaurants, so people come in on a Saturday night. And then if they're at the mall doing something, who wants to cook? Now, one of the things I'm going to say to you, though, you said you're in Garden City. Are you still in Manhattan? I think that was one of your original locations.
Yeah, we've got our flagship in the center of Times Square on 46th Street. So we've got a big location right there.
And Roosevelt Field, and where's the third one?
And the third one is in Edison, New Jersey, exit 11.
Okay.
off the turnpike, central New Jersey, and also a very nice location.
Now, you have a very demanding group because, first of all, Roosevelt Field, very upscale place. You're in the Garden City area. You service really all of Long Island with the main access roads coming off and on there and next to the movie theater. What has been the reception from the local people, and what is the dish they come in the most for?
So we've been incredibly successful at Roosevelt Field. We've been busy since the day we opened. I've got a terrific staff. You and I were speaking a little bit earlier about Juan Carlos Gomez, who's our general manager out there. He's sort of the mayor of that location.
Terrific person. Great guy.
Thank you. And he and I have been working together for 15 years, and he's really created this spectacularly hospitable, welcoming atmosphere. So I'm sorry.
We were talking about serving the local area because these are demanding people. They know what they want, and they want it good. If the steak isn't, really just the way it should be, or the pasta isn't prepared properly, they're going to tell you.
Yeah, well, and it is a very demanding audience, but you have to operate at a very high level, especially to be as successful for as long as we've been there. The favorite dish in that location, actually, the number one seller is our churrasco, which is a long flat strip of skirt steak, very flavorful, very well marbled. It's delicious. And I think that is the best seller there. It's, it's a higher end item. It's got to be cooked right, or else, obviously it's not going to be accepted by the guests. But we make hundreds of those a day.
Now, I know you have a bar area there. How does a restaurant, if you can take us behind the scenes a little bit, between the bar and the food, who is the winner, or it's like offense and defense? Who's going to make the most for the restaurant?
Well, it's a very interesting question. We have a higher liquor to food ratio than most restaurants in our, in our service level, because the mojito, the rum-based drinks, the sangrias are such an important part of the entire meal experience. So we have a very big bar business. We do a wonderful happy hour. We've got lots of terrific specials. But the truth of the matter is that almost everybody who's an adult comes in and has some form of an alcoholic drink. So you can have a mojito, which is the classic mojito is really, I think, the best thing that we serve. But we serve it with all sorts of wonderful tropical fruit flavors. We do the same thing with our margaritas. And then our sangrias, which are really classic Spanish, heavy duty sangrias are really very, very popular. And we do those, we make those with different kinds of wines. So we make, our basic red with a good Cabernet. We make a white with a number of different wonderful white wines. And by the way, all the wines we carry are Latin based. So they're all going to come from Central or South America. and or Spain, and very rich in flavor, very robust, great sangrias.
If a husband and wife are sitting there listening, or a boyfriend, girlfriend, we'll make it that way, or even just two business associates, they come in there, they'd like to have a glass of something from your bar, just as we did with the food. What's the drink you'd recommend that they're going to love and say, oh, I'm coming back here? Okay,
the two drinks that I think are really the best thing we do are the classic Methuselah mojito. So Methuselah is a spirit that was originally distilled in Cuba. It's now distilled between the islands and Florida, but it's still the same recipe. And I would do a classic Methuselah mojito. I would also do our classic red sangria, which is, again, it's more than a sangria. It's a very rich, robust drink. And then the other thing I want to mention is we do monthly specials. And some of the monthly specials are pretty spectacular. So we do Coquitos Christmas time. We do, for instance, a wonderful cranberry sangria around Thanksgiving. We do some spectacular margaritas in the spring. We do a blood orange margarita that's just absolutely delicious during the blood orange, season. And we try to be very seasonal with all these drinks.
And I have to say to people, which of course I guess most of us have noticed, every once in a while you pass a restaurant, there's two people in there, and one of them is the owner and the other one is the waiter. And no, you know what I mean? There's only one or two tables occupied. This is a very active place. I did a little scouting over there. I go over to Roosevelt Field, as many people do. And I'm going to say also, I thought your prices were very reasonable, in a market like that where you're in a top populated area, a very busy area. I'm sure a lot of restaurants would love to be in there because people are hungry. They come out of shopping. They want to go someplace. You have the access road convenience. You have the movie theater. You're close to other entertainment on Long Island. So you really have a win-win spot there.
Yeah, as a business, I really want to offer a value. So people come in and they have this wonderful atmosphere, but more importantly, they get a big plate of great food for reasonable prices. Very often people don't finish the meal. They take out a doggy bag and they reheat it at home, which, reheats very well. But you want to make sure that people leave and they feel like they got a good value. They had a good experience. They leave happier than when they came in. And, giving them really good pricing is part of what we do.
I think the only thing I'd say there, I might contradict you on that and say by the time I left there, I might be so stuffed that I'm not happy. I'm just too stuffed to move. And I'm thinking of a TV host who used to say before he went to every restaurant, he opened the belt on his pants because he regularly ate too much. So I think we'd all have that problem in your restaurant. Now, today, takeout seems to be a big thing. Is that part of your restaurant, or are you noticing that, or is that different in the Garden City, Roosevelt Field area?
No, it was always part of our program, but since COVID, it's become a much more significant part of our program. People are still ordering in or picking up in greater quantity or greater numbers than they did pre-COVID. But during COVID, that's one of the things that kept us going. When, the in-store, in-restaurant operation was either stopped or very slow, it was the takeout and delivery that really made the difference. And, we had a lot of logistical work to do to make sure that we had the packaging right and that we worked with the right delivery companies and some of our own delivery people. But it dramatically increased during COVID, and the level has stayed high. We're still well above pre-COVID times for delivery and takeout, and it's an area that we're still focused on and will continue to be focused on.
You hit something there, and it's so true, and it's one of those invisible things that you don't see until you have a problem with. If you don't get the right packaging, whether to keep it hot without things congealing, and it's going to slide a little bit in the car. Somebody puts in the car, they can't help. They stop short. Another car is behind them. I've had that happen to me recently. But then you get home, if that container isn't tight enough, and yet not too tight that you're preventing any air to get in, etc., it's going to be all over the back seat of the car or the trunk, etc. So there's a lot to do with that most of us don't even see. We just expect it to be as good as it would be in the restaurant. But you have to have the right containers for the right food at the right place without either too much room or not enough room. So I guess another problem, but I'm sure there's experts in that field who take care of that.
Yeah, well, you got to keep the fries crispy. If you put them in a container and they just sort of steam themselves,
exactly.
They get soft and soggy and nobody wants them. So those have to be in breathable containers. On the other hand, we have something hot that's liquid. It's got to be airtight and, spill proof. And then of course we're very serious on becoming as ecologically friendly as possible. So we're sourcing out a whole different set of items that are biodegradable and so forth. It's become a very important part of how we present our food.
Jeremy, at this point again in our show, I'd like our audience to know if you're just tuning in, you're probably getting hungry by now listening to Jeremy. You're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Jeremy Merrin. He is the owner and CEO of Havana Central Restaurant and Group, and he owns 3 locations. One of them, Havana Central, is located right on the perimeter of Roosevelt Field. It's in, I guess you'd call it Restaurant Row, right next to the theater. I'm going to say it's on the western side of Roosevelt Field, if I'm correct. And see, correct. I know my locations there. I scout out restaurants. Whenever there's good food, I want to be close to it. Jeremy, what's something about the restaurant business you could tell us that most people really don't understand or maybe even appreciate?
Well, there are a lot of things. The real reason why I love this business, even more than really enjoying the entertainment value of, feeding people and making them happy, is when you're in the restaurant business, you're in the hospitality business, and everybody who works in the restaurant business has to have that hospitality thing inside. So I love the people that I work with. I really, really enjoy them. We have a lot of fun together. There's some wonderful stories. There are also some very difficult stories, but we've been very lucky to develop a really good family atmosphere in each of our locations. Restaurants notoriously have very high turnover. We have many, many people that have been with, I've worked with for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years. It's that kind of a place. So I would say that's the thing that I happen to love the most. But on the other hand, it's a very challenging business. It's not, you don't make huge amounts of money in the restaurant business. You make it bit by bit. So you have to watch all the variables very carefully. You have to watch your cost of goods, your labor costs. You have to make sure that the guest experience is great. If somebody leaves unhappy, they can post some horrible thing on, Yelp or Google or something like that. And it's painful, and you have to overcome that. So we really have to be extra specially careful to make sure everybody leaves with a great experience. And then, you have the wear and tear of a restaurant, which is more than usual, most retail environments, because people are using everything, the bathrooms, the seating, the tables, the doors so often. And it gets so much wear and tear that there's a lot of replacement, a lot of equipment replacement. So there's a lot of detail that goes into keeping a restaurant up to snuff and keeping everything working and in good working order and very presentable to the guest.
And I've often felt that's a very, very hard business. Most of us, we see somebody who's making money, or presumably so, in what looks like a good business, or if it's been around. And like you said, if you have employees that's been there a number of years, and I look at this with any business from a barbershop to a law office, accounting office, if the employees have been there, there's something good about that business. And if they stay, and if there's a quick turnover, you go to the bank, there's a different person in there every month, something isn't either well run, maybe for a period of time or something, but there's something going on there. What about, I've read something about the Havana Central Market. What is that?
That is our growing retail area. We started selling hot sauces and T-shirts, and now we're moving into more Latin goods. Over the last 20 years, we've developed hundreds of thousands of followers on Facebook and, all these online platforms, Instagram. And so there's a certain demand. There are certain hard to find items that people just can't get on a regular basis. Most importantly, we're starting to wholesale or sell to our guests frozen empanadas that allow them, and we give them instructions and allow them to take them home and cook them off whenever, they're hungry. So, I think we do better empanadas than almost anybody. That's been a very, and again, this is a new business for us. It's growing, but we're very excited about it.
That's another great accolade, because if people not only can't get enough in your restaurant and are buying from Havana Central Market and love your product that much, that says a lot about it. They want to even have it at home or use it in their own cooking. So it's a good sign. Now, I also see that you have something called a loyalty club, and I don't associate that too much with restaurants, but that might be my fault. So can you tell us what this loyalty club is about?
Yeah, of course. It's a way for us to give back to our guests. It's also a way for us to communicate with our guests. So you join the loyalty club, and you get all sorts of terrific perks. You get, upon joining, you get, I think, a free appetizer. You get a free meal after so many dollars of purchase. You earn points towards that free meal, and those continue. And it's a great program, but it also allows us to gather a list and send out when we have special promotions. So once a year, we have Customer Appreciation Day, where we do everything's half price for the entire day. Wintertime, we do, for instance, we do a big Thanksgiving promotion. We do a big New Year's promotion. We do a wonderful romantic Valentine's Day. So we send these things out to our loyalty list first. We let them make reservations and have a chance to get seating before we open it up to the general public. So there are a lot of perks to being a member of the loyalty club, and it's become a very, very important part of our business.
Jeremy, it sounds like you've got everything going in the right direction, and I don't think you need that for loyalty. It sounds like if people eat there and try those empanadas and a few of those drinks, they're going to be loyal. It's fun to do the holidays and kind of make them part of the family atmosphere, but I think you've got a great thing going there. So thank you so much for being with us today. We want to remind our audience that our guest today has been Jeremy Merrin. He is the owner and CEO of Havana Central Restaurant Group. They own 3 locations of Havana Central. The nearest one to our location here is in Roosevelt Field Mall in Garden City. And if you go around the theater and restaurant row, you'll find it there, and you can find all those good foods Jeremy has been talking about. Thanks so much for being with us today. We appreciate all the information and the background about Havana Central.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it.
I'm Bill Horan. We want to thank you for listening to this week's special edition of My Hometown.
We like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to whpc@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.